Our role model of today is Kemp Gregory, and your story, Kemp, is all about pioneering clean tech by launching a company that turns idle oil wells into gravity-powered energy storage. And you also lead with regulatory efforts enabling safe, sustainable infrastructure repurposing. You are the CEO and founder of Renewell Energy, and your work tackles environmental and economic issues, demonstrating how leadership at the intersection of legacy industries and clean energy can drive widespread change. You show how we can pivot from fossil fuels to renewables, how we can lead with innovation and technical insight, and how we can build companies and indeed industries and also make the world a better place. Welcome to WeCan, Camp. I'm delighted to have you here. Talk to us about your company and Renewell Energy. How did it start? When did it start? Give us all the background.
Yeah, happy to do so. Thank you, Stephanie, for having me on the show. Really excited to be here and get the chance to tell the story. Yeah, my story starts back in Houston, Texas. That's where I was born and raised. Went to study engineering at UT Austin, then went to go work for Shell as a petroleum engineer, and did that for about 5 years. And I was actually living in Argentina working for Shell when I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to be in the energy world. I just didn't want to be in the oil and gas world. So I left Argentina and went to California, knowing that I couldn't just stop being one thing and start being something else entirely without a little bit of retraining. So I went to Stanford, got essentially a master's in renewable energy engineering from the Doerr School of Sustainability. And I was inundated with lots of new things. But I also brought a good deal of information that not a lot of other people knew. I was sort of the token oil and gas guy on campus, if you will. To see firsthand there was a major problem in the renewable energy world, and that was the need for energy storage. Sort of wind and solar not being able to be controlled. The way I like to say it is civilization's demand curve and Mother Nature's supply curve, they don't really get along though. And so we need energy storage of all types, but particularly low cost. So I started thinking about, okay, well, how can we make really, really low cost energy storage? And the big unlock came when I started thinking about another problem, which is the oil and gas industry's massive backlog of idle oil and gas wells that sit around and do nothing or nothing good. What would it look like to solve both of those problems at the same time, or at least help? And that is the genesis of Renewell today. I like to add this little piece of humility check. I didn't come up with the weight, the winch, and the wire. I was actually a good friend of mine who lives in Houston. We grew up together, also an engineer, also in the oil and gas industry, named Walker Colt. He came up with the idea of using a weight to turn wells into energy storage. I came up with the idea of how it could benefit sort of everybody, make it a win-win situation. And that is, you give oil and gas companies another option besides destroying these wells and destroying the electrical infrastructure that's out there, and let them turn it into something that helps the future. And then they get to be a part of the future as well. So that's sort of me and the company in a quick background and the genesis of how it got started at Stanford about 6 years ago.
Kemp, and if I understood that correctly, you met the people that are building this company with you at Stanford, which is often the case. I think you need to tell sort of the people who are not engineers and don't work in, renewables or in oil and gas, how does that actually work?
So my co-founder, his name is Stefan Strickfist. We were in the same graduate program at Stanford. We were both slightly on the older side compared to the other graduate students. We were like 28. Everybody else was like 22. So we were like, you and me, we're going to be friends. So it started out as just a fast friendship. Lots in common, lots of similar jokes and humor. And then it morphed into, oh, let's work on this idea together. I think you're brilliant. Let's partner up. And so it started out as a friendship, and it's still a friendship. We just are trying to tackle a really big problem and using our friendship to fuel it. So it really is important that we sort of started off on the basis I like you like me. Let's spend a whole bunch of time together and try to solve a really hard thing.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the the fertile ground that created the type of trust and dedication required to take on a big project, take on a big mission.
Kemp, so where are you at now in
Yeah,
this
so yeah,
journey?
I mentioned that the sort of the seed was planted almost 6 years ago. We founded the company about 5 years ago after Stefan and I graduated. Now we are a team of six, so Stefan and I plus three engineers and one data scientist. We're hiring a few more roles right now. We've just won a bunch of grants from both the California state government and Kern County, which is where we're normally based.
Yeah.
And we're super excited about the future. We've got one commercial system up and running. Inside of the grant funding we've just won, which totals $6.4 million, we'll be able to build 5 more systems. So we'll convert 5 more wells into gravity-based energy storage. And we're trying to sell what we've got. We've got a couple different irons in the fire. Nothing signed yet, but trying hard to get some customers to say yes. And that is directly related to the regulatory work that we've been doing that you mentioned earlier. Basically, customers told us we're not going to do this until we can feel confident that the regulator is going to treat your technology a certain way. So we listened to the customer and we went to work and we got regulatory clarity in California, Colorado, and New Mexico, which represents tons and tons, thousands and thousands of wells. Yeah. So we're really excited about the runway that we've created for ourselves with the regulatory clarity in those 3 states. And now we're trying to improve the product and make sales and do the things startups do.
It sounds hugely exciting, Ken. Talk to us about this massive opportunity. What does that look like? What can the future look like when one repurposes all of these wells?
Yeah, where to begin? I'll start with some numbers that are a little difficult to contextualize, but I will try to contextualize them. There are about 3 million unplugged wells in the United States alone. That number jumps to about 3.5 when you include Canada. And then there is a bunch more. Let's just talk about North America for now. So an enormous quantity of unplugged wells. And I'm grouping together active wells, wells that still make oil and gas, and inactive wells, wells that do not make oil and gas. But the vast majority of wells in the United States and Canada are inactive. They sit there and they don't make any oil and gas, which is really mind-blowing. So there's about 900,000 active wells in the United States, about 700,000 of those 900,000, what we call stripper wells, which means they make less than 15 barrels a day. That just matters in that they're almost inactive. They will be inactive soon. Every active well will be inactive eventually, but the vast majority of the active wells today are sort of teetering on inactive status. So what that you've got sort of 3 demographics here, 3 layers to the demographics of wells. You've got the active wells, which we just talked about, the 900,000, 700,000 of which are teetering. Then you got the 2 million or so inactive wells, and then you got the 50,000 to 500,000 orphan wells. Nobody really knows. For clarity of semantics, we talk about idle and inactive wells. That's the biggest demographic by far. And what we don't want to happen, what we cannot happen as a nation or even as like a civilization generally, is to have massive amounts of inactive or idle wells go orphan. The Biden administration carved out about $4 billion to deal with orphan wells. Yeah, it's going to take something like $400 billion to clean up all these wells. And so $4 billion is a noble attempt, but it's a tiny percentage of what we have to do. It's 1% of what we have to do. And so we're over here sort of waving the banner saying like, look, where we're going in terms of what's going to happen to all these wells is not a good place. We should do something else. We should repurpose this infrastructure, especially now that we're looking down the barrel of an electricity infrastructure that's going to have to handle a lot more load, data centers, EVs, everything else. And we haven't had more load in the United States in the last 40 years. And so we've got this system that's not expected to deliver more load. We're not going to build any more power lines. That's just the nature of the situation we're in today. We're not building any more power lines. Nobody wants more power lines across their land. And if nobody wants more power lines across their land, what happens? You get no more power lines. So you can't go build some massive new plant and pipe it into the system because You can't get the lines to connect it. So the truth is, the grid we have today is all the grid we're ever going to have, which means it's kind of like a big game of musical chairs now. Whoever's sitting on electrical infrastructure that can be used or repurposed gets to play. And the world doesn't think of the oil and gas industry as a big electrified asset, but the reality is that it is. There's something like 240,000 miles of electric lines in oil and gas fields in the United States. That's more than all of the high voltage lines in the nation. So one of my other little soapboxes is like, hey, stop thinking about the oil fields just as oil. It is a massive electrical asset that should be repurposed, not torn down, especially now that every pole and wire is sort of precious because we're not making more of them.
Yeah.
So what it could look like is you transform what was previously this sort of heavy industrial sector that had some leaks and spills and gave people a lot of concern into something that's just clean energy storage. And you can do it on a huge scale. We think there'd be hundreds of thousands of wells that could be repurposed. So it's not every single well. We do need some particular characteristics for a well to be repurposed, but it could be a really, really beautiful, sort of poetically just situation in which you take the old, repurpose it, and have it be a key part of the new.
I mean, I was about to say the exact same word. It's almost poetically beautiful how that can be turned around into something really amazing. And it sounds like it is a massive opportunity, both from building renewables, but also as a opportunity to carve out a whole new industry that makes money, that creates economic opportunities, that employs people, etc. So when it's a really nice round circle of doing good, then it shouldn't be so hard to convince people that this is the right thing. So Ken, talk to us about those learnings of leading something that is very innovative, that people don't, maybe don't see the vision that you have.
Yeah, the field of education has been sort of twofold. There's the customers, i.e., the oil and gas companies, and then there's the regulators, and oftentimes the state legislatures that end up passing bills that tell the regulators what to do. So that's been an education in catering your message to different audiences. And so when we talk to the oil and gas companies, they have a lot of inertia around just filling wells full of cement, cutting their heads off. And so we try to sort of claw them back and say, like, I need you to think about this a little bit more creatively. You're sitting on something that could be useful. Stop destroying them. Even the regulator's telling you to destroy them. I'm going to go talk to the regulator about this same thing. So then I go to the regulator and I say something like, you are in the business of putting yourself out of business. You are trying to get these oil and gas companies to destroy that which you regulate. Wouldn't it be a lot better if you could turn those things into something else and you could keep regulating them? Yeah. They might not be oil and gas wells. They could be this new thing. Then you're not in the business of eliminating your jurisdiction. And every regulator likes that. They don't want to be in the business of eliminating their own jurisdiction. They want to have new and creative and fun things to regulate that have beautiful stories about repurposing the same people, processes, and knowledge that built the oil and gas industry, which is a giant, I mean, love it or hate it, it's an enormous beast that needs good regulation. And so we want to go to those same people that have been doing that good regulation and say, like, hey, there's a new world for you here. Don't you want to see that? And it's been a really rewarding process, honestly. Like the bill that we passed in California, it passed through the Assembly 79-0, and it passed through the Senate 36-1.
Amazing.
And to be that purple in a time like this is really rewarding. So people are like, oh, you're crazy to try to do a startup that's got regulatory / political what's the word? Dependencies.
Yes.
And I'm kind of like, honestly, it's been a blast. It's not been smooth. We've had some bumps along the way, but to be involved in something so purple at a time when everything is so divisively red and blue has been really fun.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you lead with that and you show that this is actually possible, in such divided times. This has nothing to
Yeah,
do with which party you belong to. It's just the right thing to do, and it's a huge opportunity.
yeah, yeah. Well said.
Kem, so what will success look like for you? What does that mean for you?
Yeah. So I mentioned we've converted one well. We've got five more that we're going to do via some grant funding. I want to convert another two to 300 wells in the next 5 years.
Mm,
Um, so it's hardware. You can't move at software speeds. But converting a couple hundred wells in the next couple years would really give us the platform to engage at least a component of this giant, which is the oil and gas industry, that would help us scale really fast. I mean, we don't need to recreate the wheel in terms of how you roll out hardware to the oil and gas industry. They roll out new hardware all the time. Is it energy storage in wells? No. Is it everything else you can possibly imagine that's very technical? Yes. And so, again, using that same infrastructure of, there's the buyers, there's the sellers, and there's the makers.
mm,
And the top is sort of the Shell Chevrons of the world. The middle is the Halliburton, Baker Hughes, Schlumberger. Bottom is the FMC, GE, the folks like that. We will probably fit in right in the middle there, that
yeah,
Baker Hughes, Schlumberger layer. Whether they buy us in the future or whether we collaborate with them, it's sort of the logical end of Renewell builds a couple hundred. We prove every nook and cranny of how this thing can work, business model and technology. And then we say, look, industry, we want to scale within you. Uh, we're not going to try to do it all ourselves. Uh, let's partner.
yeah,
That's what success would look like to me.
yeah, yeah. I know that there is an enormous amount of money that's being poured into infrastructure products all over the world. What does that mean to repurpose infrastructure? And what could that mean for the future in general? I mean, you're showing this with one thing right now, but if one thing's very big picture, there is a massive opportunity, I'm sure, with lots of other infrastructure repurposing.
Yeah, I could sort of live under the banner of repurposement
Yeah.
and try to fly that flag everywhere I go. Because I believe it's the only way. I think with what we've got in mind in terms of growth, especially in the electricity sector, I don't really believe greenfield development will get us there. What we want to build and what's realistic of what we can build from a greenfield perspective, I think there's a mega mismatch there. Um, I think the quality of life that we all want and have come to expect is built on an enormous quantity of infrastructure, um, both information and physical. I mean, like the internet and power lines. And if we don't repurpose every last thing we can, I think we're doing ourselves a big disfavor by trying to start from scratch.
Yeah, I agree.
That means people and equipment. Repurpose the power lines, but also repurpose the electricians that have been working on those power lines for 20 years.
Yeah.
Uh, let's bring them all in. Try to repurpose what we have.
Kemp, I love that you have such a great big vision. What are your main motivators or the things that really motivate and inspire you to keep going?
Yeah,
Because it's a bit like a chiseling away, and I know that I've started various projects in my life. It's a chiseling away at something that seems quite scarily big.
yeah, uh, yeah. I'm deciding on how to answer this. I think I'll just go for the cheesiest option. When I was a kid, I played a bunch of computer games that were all more or less the same thing. You have a little town with villagers and you build that town. You build more walls and you build more people and you just keep building and you build your city. And you manage this economy. And as I got older, the games got more complex. But I was nearly addicted to the progress that could be done in these games in short periods of time because you can just fast forward.
Mm,
And now I genuinely think that's impacted the way I operate as a person. And I want to see that type of impact. Now, it's much more akin to chiseling a stone statue than hitting the fast forward button on a video on a computer game. And that's been a call that's been difficult to answer. because I want progress so bad and I want it fast. Um, but that's just not the way things work in the real world. And sometimes being called to the slow and steady, which is inevitable in the hardware world, is a high calling. Um, and it's a tough calling. But I think my ultimate motivation is I would love to look back in 20 years or 30 years even and say, like, I'm driving down the road and I see a repurposed well. And I'm thinking, whether it was Renewell or some company that was a competitor, I wouldn't care. I had a direct impact in that change. And then I drive down the road and I see 1,000 more. I want to see the impact of making something better. Now it's going to take a lot longer than 15-year-old Kemp in a computer game. But yeah, I think that's what's going on under the hood, is that I want to see change for the better. And if it takes a long time, then great. But if it comes to the type of scale I have in mind, then I will consider myself very, very pleased and successful.
Yeah. So what kind of a leader are you?
uh, yeah, I think I am a type of leader that's less, captain of the ship, go this way, go that way, and more dedicated to the idea that the best idea should rise to the top. My ego should never, ever get in the way. And so I don't know if you want to call it leadership by deferment, or what we sometimes refer to as distributed agency.
Yeah.
But I try to never be the problem. I see some organizations where the leader is the problem. They might be really gifted at X, but sometimes that makes them blind to Y and Z. And so I don't try to be a commanding presence with my colleagues and subordinates. I try to be a person who can aggressively sift through ideas, but picks the best one, whether it's mine or not. And I think that ultimately creates a workplace in which people feel motivated to bring up their best ideas. Because the other thing I believe supremely is that context is king. And I just don't have context for every last thing. I can't know it all. Even when we're this small, I can't know it all.
Yeah.
And so having my electrical engineer come up with an idea that I would never consider, and it floating all the way to the top, getting approved, getting a budget circled around it, getting money allocated to that budget, and then back down to so that it goes to work, that to me smells like the best form of leadership.
Definitely. Kemp, so what are the challenges? What do you view as your sort of biggest challenges between now and getting to those 200-300 wells that you're eyeing at the moment?
Yeah, at Stanford, they were like, you have to be 10x better than whatever you're trying to beat. If you're not 10x better, then don't even consider it. And so Stefan and I put our heads together. How can we be 10x better than essentially lithium-ion batteries? And I think we carved out a reasonable path to achieve 10x better energy storage. The thing about that, though, is we're selling to a regulated monopoly. And so it's not the normal sales environment. Your energy storage revenues are what they are. And it's not like I get to walk in and into a room that the lithium ion salesman just walked out of. It's kind of like the grid says, I will pay you this for this service. Yeah. Whether or not you can do it or not is up to you. Whether you can meet those requirements is up to you. So that's sort of a challenge. We're bringing a 10x better solution into a funky sales environment because it's a regulated monopoly. And then on the other side, the oil and gas side, like I said, there's a lot of inertia around. We've been told to do, fill wells full of cement, cut their heads off. So that's what we're going to do. We're good operators. We want to be perceived that way. So we're going to stick to our word and spend the money that we've allocated. And that's noble in its own way. But the other barrier that creates is like, don't spend that money that way. There's a potentially better way. And so convincing oil and gas operators that there's a better way is one of the major barriers. Yeah.
Kemp, so what do you feel are sort of your superpowers that make you tenacious in a way where you have to overcome a lot of obstacles or situations that have been decided, and so And people think this is the way to go, and you need to convince them otherwise.
Mm. I don't know if I've ever actually delved the depths of my own mind to sort of find the origination point of this unwavering confidence that it can be done.
I
I
mean,
guess
it
part
could
of
be
it
that it
feels,
comes from a dreamer. I'm a dreamer. I know I'm a dreamer, and I know that's my superpower.
I would say every startup founder is probably at least in part dreamer because you have to be able to dream it up to chase it.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that there have been certain events along the way that have reinforced that I'm on the path that more or less God wants for me. I'm a fairly, shouldn't say it that way. I'm a devoted follower of what I'll call regular, plain old Christianity.
Yeah.
uh, and I think that there's been signs along the way that say like, yeah, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing,
Mm,
um, and it's no guarantee of success. These signposts,
yeah.
it's just a guarantee of doing what I'm called to do.
Yeah. Kim, so who are your role models? Who are the people who inspire you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I, yeah, I'd have to say short answer is sort of a cheat code, which is my dad. uh, my dad ran a small business for my entire life,
Mm,
um, and was infinitely patient with the process and customers. And I remember thinking as a kid, I am never going to be my own business owner because I don't want to have to deal with customers who treat you bad, or I don't have to deal with making payroll next to a month. I'll just go get some big corporate job and do that for the rest of my life, and I'll enjoy not having to do the hurdle jumping that I saw my dad do as a kid.
mm.
Here I am, very much in my, trying to run a business and going through all the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. And so again, it's been an example for me in that way, and that he's patient, he's determined, never gets too down, never gets too up, and keeps going.
Kim, so how can people that are listening, how can people support you?
I guess it's a fairly niche world of what I need, but I guess there's two worlds there. World number one is the oil and gas world. If you know somebody who's got the decision to manage wells in a certain
Mm,
way, or owns wells, those aren't always the same people. Um, then I want to talk to them. My rule is any operator, anywhere, anytime. Um, that's my customer base. That's who I want to talk to. And then on the electricity side, there are people who decide what gets added to the portfolio. They might work for PG&E or ERCOT or something like that. And they're making decisions about what the future of infrastructure looks like. And I don't even necessarily need them to buy anything from me. I need them to believe that repurposement is the way,
mm, mm.
kind of based off of the points we were making earlier. And for them to believe that that is how we should at least be playing one of our hands in this build a better future game.
Kemp, I'm wondering how much money does it take to repurpose these 200 to 300 wells?
Yeah, the I guess the direct answer is revenue accounted for. We think it would take us about $20 million. Uh, so that's like how much we go
That's
into the
like
red, if you want
peanuts
to
in
think.
the grand scheme of things. Mm.
I tend to agree with you. Sometimes investors don't see it that way, but I tend to agree with you. And it's helped in a big way because of the energy tax credit. I mean, the investment tax credit that survived the one big beautiful bill.
Yeah.
So sort of Biden era tax credits for energy storage survived Trump,
Hmm.
and now can be either 30, 40, or 50%, and they don't sunset until 2030. So our numbers are boosted by that, no doubt. And so, thank you, federal government. um, but it's a signpost that there's a lot of consensus around the need for energy storage. This is a bit of a tangent, but in the past, energy storage sort of got labeled like, oh, it's the solution for wind and solar firming, because wind and solar are variable, energy storage can solve that problem. Today, the world looks at energy storage a little bit differently, I think, and that's like it's just necessary, period. Whether we're talking
Yeah.
about firming wind or
Yeah.
solar or not,
Yeah.
making that much energy storage makes the grid flexible, and the grid will 100% have to be flexible, or it will fail. Those are just, I know that sounds a little binary, but that's what I think is going to happen. We either make the grid really, really flexible because the future is going to be kind of wild, or it just won't work.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard this repeatedly that this IMF conference in October in Washington, there was more talk of building data centers than anything else. I mean, it was between politicians and business people and bankers and investors, and that was a huge conversation. So I always think, all these data centers will need they need so much energy that we need people to scale what you're doing and what other people are doing and fast.
Yeah, you're spot on. So the data centers are the new demand. Think of this in like sometimes the electric grid is kind of hard to understand, but using an analogy of water and pipes is helpful. Think of somebody standing at the data center control board, and they're just constantly working the faucet like this. I need this much, I need this much, I need this much, I need this much, I need none, I need everything. And so not only are they new demand, but they're unpredictable. They're not unpredictable. They're variable. They are not like baseload retail distribution of a neighborhood that can be very steady. They're all over the place. And so that makes them even more difficult to manage. So not only are we getting new demand for electrons, we're getting demand that's going to be fluctuating and not baseload. And that's the hardest of the hard. Is cheap, clean, variable power. I should say cheap, clean, dispatchable, fast dispatchable power. That's like the triumvirate of difficult. Because like let's say nuclear. Nuclear checks two of those boxes.
Yeah.
It's cheap and it's clean, but it's not fast. You can't ramp it up and ramp it down.
No.
Natural gas meets fast and cheap, but not clean. So you got to have energy storage that's cheap, fast, and dispatchable.
And clean. Yeah.
Cheap, clean, and dispatchable.
Yeah. Kemp, so what are your plans and goals? Tell us about next year. We know you have a 5-year view.
Yeah, so next year we're going to build our our second system. So we've got that one operating in California now, which we very uncreatively call Alpha. And this next one, you guessed it, will be called Beta. I'm so excited for Beta going to the ground. We've got some investors that have come alongside us and said, hey, how could you go faster? Here's the funds to do so. We said, this is amazing. Thank you. So we'll build Beta next year. And I can't wait to pour in all the stuff we learned on how to not do it the first time around. So Beta is going to be sort of Gravity Well 2.0. So I'm so excited about that. But on top of the 6.4 that we've raised, that we've won, we want to raise a Series A, something like $8 million. That's going to help us grow the team, do more R&D, and shift Renewell slightly away from we build this thing that's a weight, winch, and wire to we are an innovation company that's dreaming big about how to repurpose the oil and gas infrastructure into energy storage. We won't go too far afield, but there are more ways than one to, change this animal from one thing to the other. So we're really, really excited about that. But in the short term, we want to build those 5 systems. Number 1 next year, 4 the following year, and then, like I said, there's some sales efforts going on in California and Colorado. They're not done by any means, but some of them are hopefully close to the finish line. Selling to big corporations is always hard, but I'd love to be able to email you sometime in the future and say, like, so-and-so said yes to a 5-well deal in Colorado.
Amazing.
Major jump forward. That would basically be our first sales. As much as we love grant funding, every startup needs to make a sale to a customer.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of our next big step. We've got some balls that are close to the end zone, but not quite there yet.
Super exciting. Kemp, so what takeaways would you like our listeners to have from your story?
Yeah, I would say don't fear change that has a big scope attached to it. So when we got started with Renewell, we knew that we were going to have to change regulations. We didn't know that we were going to have to run bills and hire lobbyists and do all that. But, we told ourselves, we think this can work. We think this story is electable, for lack of a better word. People will choose it. um, and we weren't scared to chase it. So even if you've got a big idea that requires change on multiple fronts, utilities, oil and gas industry, regulators, maybe it's something, some list of totally different things. I would say don't be afraid to chase it if you really think it will work. Don't throw your life at a wall that can never be scaled. I'm not advocating for a lack of practicality, but I am advocating for the courage to chase something that you think can work, because you might know more about it than anybody else in the world, even if you spend 6 months researching it. Yeah, trust your gut.
Kemp Gregory, we're so excited to have you on WeCan. Thank you for leading by example. Thank you for what you do, and to all the listeners, write in with ideas and with your feedback on renewal energy and this incredible repurposing business that you set up.
Thanks very much, Stephanie.